and real estate investing. Guys, today, when I first heard from Tom, I was moved, I was inspired. More importantly, I could not wait for him to come onto the podcast because I knew that he has such a great story to share that I knew would inspire even my own kids. And listening to his story, hearing how he went from, no, you know what? I'm gonna let him tell the story because this is the best part. So, Mr. Tom Carter, welcome to the podcast today. How you doing, man?
Hey man, I'm great. I'm great. Thank you so much. And I'm very excited to be here, man. I've been a big fan of your podcast for a long time, so I'm grateful to be here.
Well, you because of folks like you and Tom, we could not have become the best podcast on affordable housing investments without supporters like you, without people with hearts like yours. Because when I first started this, I know I've shared this story with you, but we've had 17 views the first month when I had it. And I'm pretty sure that was just like my mom clicking on it, right?
Mhm.
And long and behold, it's 3 years later, we've had over 300,000 downloads. But more importantly, it's about getting the right people to listen with the right intentions.
That's right.
And I could not have been more grateful to have you come into my life. And more importantly, I can't wait for like my kids to meet you because I think you have such a great story. So, for people that don't know you, Tom, like who are you? What's your story?
Well, I can start from the beginning if that makes the most sense.
Let's do it.
Okay, great. So I'm born in the Midwest. My family is all in the Midwest. My immediate family is all in the Midwest. Grew up traveling around the country, mostly on military bases. My father was in the Air Force. He retired Air Force after 20 years. So I thought that that was the life that I was going to lead. I was going to go into the military. Um, but I found my way into early on. I knew that I loved film. I loved music. I loved telling stories. Fundamentally, that's the thing that drove me in my career. And hold on one second. My window changed again.
No problem. I can still hear you. You're okay.
Okay. Oh, okay. Okay, good. Um,
So you're moving around a lot. You don't have necessarily the most stable transitions in your life,
yeah.
but keep going.
Well, I think that like that is it's one of those things where I grew up I've lived in 16 states. By the time I graduated high school,
Wow.
I'd been to 10 different schools. And a lot of people growing up were like, "Oh man, that must have been so hard." But I kind of think of it more of as a superpower because
Ah.
even in my adult life, I feel like right out of high school, and then as I was thinking about college and what my career was going to be, if you just gave me $35, like you could drop me anywhere in the world and I'll be just fine. I'll figure it out. I'll find my
Let's
people, my
go.
places. Yeah, I'll find, find a path. And I think so. I think there's like a real benefit from that comes from that life too.
So what so you've had that career and you've been moving around. Now walk us through like you've always been interested in film, TV, acting. So to tell the audience that story. Like, did you go to LA? Like what was sort of your goals there?
Yeah, so I moved to Los Angeles about I've been in Los Angeles now for a little over 20 years. I moved here originally to be in the film business. I thought I was going to be an actor, which that career lasted about 5 minutes. But I found my way into producing film and television, and for a couple different reasons. One, I felt like I liked the idea better, having a role as a producer is basically a project manager, having a role from concept to screen, finding the project and seeing it through from the very nascent stages all the way through distribution, and every stage that comes with it. And what I realized during the process is that um, every stage is creative, even the business side of it, even the deal making, even the raising capital. It's all a very creative process. And so that fed the thing that I was looking for, I think, in terms of finding a creative way into an industry and also being able to really lean into my instincts as a storyteller, just rooting out very interesting stories around very interesting enigmatic characters. And I've always been entrepreneurially minded too. So pretty much from the moment that I landed in Los Angeles, I was here. I was an assistant for about 6 months before I decided to start my own company. And now, 20 years later, I've owned and run and started several media companies. Um, and yeah,
And you've raised over how much for film?
Well, for film, I mean, when you're making film, whether it's for projects that come to me looking for capital or looking for a piece of the puzzle, that's one of the things that I also love and relish about this business, about the entertainment business too, is the ability to problem solve. And one of those elements, of course, and one of the most important parts of it is finding money. So I've raised in the aggregate in my career over $100 million
Wow.
for different film projects. It's bits and pieces here and there, 5 million there, 10 million here for a small slate of films. We've done one-off projects, we've done slates, and that's come from various, you have to also be very creative in the way that you put together financing for a film because it's partial equity, but it's also subsidies, finding the right place to go shoot the project because there's
Ah,
subsidies all over the United States and frankly all over the world too. So finding the best location to maximize stretch every penny into a dollar is always the way you want to think about it.
wow. So this is so freaking cool, man. Like I cannot the trajectory of your life just like exploded when I just kind of hear from it for the first time. So when you went to LA, you wanted to become an actor, and then you were trying to figure it out. Tell us about the struggle of like figuring it out. Because more importantly, Tom, I think I kind of alluded to you when I talked to you earlier. Is I really want my daughter, my kids to learn from you because not everything is going to be smooth sailing, to say the least. And more importantly, I mean, when your kids listen to this one day, Tom, they're going to want to know what dad went through. And sometimes when we are trying to figure it out, for lack of better words, it can feel lonely. It can feel dark. Eh, It's hard. So tell us a little bit more about when you were in LA. Like, what were you going through trying to figure it out?
Um, I think that's an interesting concept that it's hard, because I feel like life, that's one of the constants I think in life is that no matter what we're doing, it's hard. If you're starting a new career, whatever you're doing, whether it's raising capital, raising kids, frankly, that's the one constant you can always plan on every day is it's going to be hard. I think that one of the gifts my father gave me, and one of the things I think that came from moving around a lot and having to find my way everywhere we'd go, and sometimes it was literally every new school year was a new school and a new set of friends and a new set of circumstances. But I don't see. I have like an innate curiosity that allows me to go and not see the hurdles, but just really look for a way in and a solution to the problem. So when I landed in Los Angeles and how that manifested, and I think that this is just this one story, I think will say a lot about how I kind of approach business just in general, is I've been a lifelong lover of film. So when I landed here in LA, I knew one person who was not in the film business, but I really wanted to be in the film business. And so as I'm driving around looking for a job, looking for my first apartment, every time I saw a production truck, I would pull over and just walk onto set because I couldn't believe I'm like, I'm here.
Yes.
They're making movies here. So I'd wander onto set and start talking to people. I didn't know at the time this is not really appropriate behavior. I was just so guileless and I wanted to be a part of it so badly. So I'd jump onto set, start talking to people, and some of the people that I met on those sets are still 20 years later some of my closest friends here, and that's how I found my way into the business. It's it's definitely a difficult business to break into, but it's not about seeing the barriers. It's about acknowledging that they're there and finding a way around it, right?
Man, and you created that opportunity is how I like to think of it. And I relate to that so much, Tom, because when I was looking at, hey, how do I get into affordable housing? How do I become a developer? And I always thought that was a game that was not meant for someone that grew up in affordable housing
Mhm.
because you walk
Mm,
around, you always think like, oh, that's like a big boys game, or that's never going to be a game for me. Like, who am I to think that I can build apartment buildings to help people?
mhm,
And had I not started this podcast, I would have never met some of the best mentors in my life. I would not have been able to meet you, frankly, to be honest. So I really want, if my daughters listen to this one day, it's like, how do you, whatever you want to do, how do you create that path for yourself to get to that point where you can accomplish whatever your mission, whatever your goal is? Because I don't care what they want to do. Let's say they want to help whatever person, whatever demographic, in whatever way they want. Well, this isn't the exact path that we would tell them to take, but I would probably tell them, hey, maybe you go start a podcast. Maybe you want to be in film, you go do what Tom did. And you just you see a production truck, you just hop right on in there and see what happens. Because guess what? The worst thing that can happen is that they say no, they might shoo you away. The best thing that can happen is you become someone like Tom, and you become best friends with some of the people, even 20 years later, just from walking on that set.
Yeah, they
Wow.
say that you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right? And so that's kind of how I like to think about any endeavor. And it's served me well both in this business, but just in life in general. And yeah.
But I remember when you telling me because you were trying to look for a place to stay, or you were trying to get enough money to make rent. Like, what were you doing to create income at that
But
point
there,
in time in LA?
we've had some great conversations. I mean, this is I guess it's just illustrative of the same thing, right? When I moved to Los Angeles, I knew the one person who let me sleep on her couch until I got on my feet. And the way that I was paying my bills, because I didn't have a job, I didn't have any prospects, all I knew is that I wanted to be here and that I was just going to figure it out. And I started knocking on doors in her neighborhood looking for odd jobs, because one thing also, my father was a mechanic. I grew up working with my hands. I'd worked in construction also when I was a kid. For a while, I studied architecture. I thought that was going to be a path for me. So the way that I was paying my bills and how I got my first apartment was helping people do their stucco, drywall, roofing, uh,
Wow.
hardwood floors, all of the above. I knew that I could do these things, and I basically I turned that into, that my income for a little while until I finally got on my feet.
Wow. Man, I
While I
mean,
was
talk
driving
about
around looking for looking for sets and people to bother on movie sets.
man, were you at one point, like, living out of your car at one point too, Tom? Like,
Not
what
here in
happened
Los
there?
Angeles, but this is another
Okay.
thing, and this is maybe a good seg into how I
Mhm.
came to real estate investing and affordable housing in particular. When I was in my 20s, I just, I lived in the Midwest. I kind of lost my way for a little while. I was in Oklahoma City, which is where I graduated high school, and found myself through a set of circumstances and probably poor decisions on my part, living in my car. And I didn't have a place or a home to stay in. But this is another thing that I think drives me a little bit, is there was this period in my life where I had to stop and think about the choices that I was making, the path that I was heading down, and kind of turning around and again, bootstrapping myself and finding my way out of that. But this is analogous, I guess, a little bit to your story too. Beyond that, when I started thinking about how to invest in real estate, how to make a dent in the affordable housing crisis, it was another thing that kind of lived in my brain where, who am I to think that I can do this? But that's not a thought that I let manifest for too long. I usually, once I once I run up
Yeah.
against a hurdle like that, my brain switches pretty quickly to, okay, what's the solution? And I know there's a way to find a path because people do it, right? You see people, I love seeing the success of other people because it just gets me very excited, because I know that it's possible. Whenever you see anybody doing anything that you feel like you might want to do, you know that someone's done it before, and so there is a path.
This is so cool because I think so many people can relate. Oh, more importantly, people can understand that you need something from within. That why needs to be so strong because no matter what you do in life, there's always going to be problems. And it's whether or not that why behind your mission is strong enough to propel you through those problems, even when they get hard. And for you, remembering back in your life when you were living out of the car for a little bit and you describing to me, it was so moving, Tom, when you talked about how it felt with the roof of the car over your head and how boxed in you can feel. Like that feeling must be propelling you towards how you figured out how you can learn about real estate.
Yes, definitely. And it's something that, knowing what it feels like to have the roof just 1 inch above your head and not have the ability to, I think what that does, and it's one of the biggest burdens that people face in life, right? Whether it's paying rent, paying a mortgage, having a roof over your head, having a stable life, having a calm and peaceful home to live in and raise your children in. Um, when that is the one of the biggest stressors in your life, it's hard to hope, it's hard to dream beyond what just getting the rent paid looks like, right? Which sometimes looks like working several jobs or finding other ways to do that. And so that was the thing that I felt like, except at least from my perspective, getting involved in real estate investing, that if I could, because as we all know, like making money is not a difficult thing to do. But if we can also relieve that type of pressure for low income families, for people who otherwise don't have an opportunity to live in a nice place and feel confident and comfortable and safe in their home, that's the goal for me.
That is so cool. And it's almost like the cumulative experiences of your life have kind of led you into real estate. But before we get into real estate, I want to kind of highlight
Sure.
how you became the person that was worthy of being able to raise almost $100 million for film. And the interesting part about this is because throughout your entire course of your life so far, up to that point, you have been demonstrating that you can go out and n- plow through obstacles, wherever there might be. But the interesting part was like when you described it, it's like, hey, raising capital for film was just part of the process. It was just part of it.
Hmm.
And being a producer is so cool because when you describe it as a project manager, it's like, oh, that's exactly what development is. It's taking a
Hmm.
piece of land that's just raw dirt and coming with an idea, coming with a concept, coming with something that says this is going to help the community thrive. And that's what's really cool because I've seen so many transferable skill sets and experiences that have led you down this path towards real estate. So when you first start raising money for like TV or media, how hard was that first conversation? Did you get like a big fat no? Like what happened?
It's definitely very difficult because it's a volatile asset class. But as a
Mm,
as a producer or a a project manager of film and TV, I'd like to think about it holistically, which is not just how to get this money in the bank to go make this thing. There are definitely folks out there that think about it that way, but it's the success of any given project, and I think this applies just across the board in all my endeavors, is not just from the nascent stage of the idea and what it is that are setting out to do, also the capital raising part. How do you put together the cap stack in a way that makes sense for the project for everybody involved, but also mitigates risks for any equity or investors that are at the table? And then ultimately, how does this project find an audience, which is the resolution of this thing? And the audience is ultimately going to be the way that the ROI is realized, right? So, uh, my conversations with investors have always been from a standpoint of investor first and risk mitigation. Part of that is finding ways to maximize subsidies, whether we're shooting in a specific place,
yes.
whether we're bringing in elements from a specific location or market that helps maximize those subsidies, so that the equity outlay is the least that it can be. But there's a lot of other factors and levers and buttons that you can push and pull in film to also mitigate risk. So sometimes you're amortizing risk over several films rather than just one project at a time. But there's multiple ways to approach it, and I think that I try to think about any given project holistically from beginning to end. And part of that end is getting the capital back, making sure that the ROI
Yes.
is realized, right? It's not a thing it's not a thing that we think about later. It's a thing we think about when we're doing the deals.
And this is so applicable towards real estate because I think when you take that mindset of investor first, mitigating risk, that's how someone feel like you are a good steward of their capital that they have spent their time, their energy earning throughout their entire life.
Yeah,
And when they see that you have that mindset, I think that's just so important. And that is such a great characteristic that translates towards the rest of whatever you care about, right? If our
yeah,
kids are raising capital, that's the first thing I would ever tell them. It's like, Show me what you're doing to protect that person because it's not about you. It's not about your glory and saying like, "Oh, I raised X amount of dollars." It's about who is that person? How you protect them? How does help them realize their goals? Whether they are investing for return, whether they're investing for impact.
That's right. I like to think about it also too, as if it's my own money, right? If
Yes.
I'm the steward of someone else's investment, then I have to think about, is this an investment that I feel like the risk is worth it? How are the risks being mitigated? Who am I working with, frankly? Like, what does the team look like? And are they going to be great stewards of my money? And I take that seriously. So that's definitely like right at the core of having those conversations because again, it's not an afterthought. They always say that you make money when you're buying the deal, right? Not at the end of the, because you want to make sure that all the risk mitigation is set up front, um, so that worst case scenarios come along, we know that we have either plan Bs or we have contingencies or we have a way to stabilize this in a way that's going to be, beneficial to the investors.
This is so good. When you were raising capital, were there ever any questions that people asked you that you might not have had a great answer for that question yet? Like, does anything ring
Yeah,
a
I mean,
bell for
whenever that
you?
comes up, I also try to be as transparent as possible too. If I don't have the answer to the question, I will go find it. And I also kind of approach things from the standpoint of like, I know that I don't know everything, right? I do
Mm.
my best to be as knowledgeable and uh, about any given investment opportunity, so that when I come to the table, I can really talk about it in a way that's not a guess. It's not trying to convince someone to do something that I'm not sure of. If I don't know the answer, I'm going to go find the answer. And if that means that that investor backs away for that particular opportunity, they'll probably come back around two or three opportunities down the road because I'll have grown and become a bigger or a smarter, I'd say, a smarter, better steward of what they're looking at for an investment opportunity.
Yeah. And I really want my kids to kind of hear that loud and clear because you're not expected to know everything. But if you lie, if you try to pretend
Yeah.
that you know everything, like that, people see through BS like all the time. It's so
Hmm.
easy, especially if you're on social media. You see all these people like talking about, they're like yelling at the screen and saying like blah, 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 blah. This is how you get rich quick. Stop. Like, you
Yeah.
gotta put in the work. And
Yeah. Yeah.
that's a great segue. So, when you first start learning about real estate, Tom, how what was the skill that you worked on? Or what was sort of how did you approach learning real estate? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I knew that it was an industry that I'd always been very interested in. Like again, I feel like I could build this house that I'm living in with my bare hands, but the financial instruments and legal instruments around the real estate industry was something that I just didn't know a whole lot about. And when I set out to learn about it, both for an investment opportunity for my wife and I and and our family, but also I wanted to approach it the right way. I wanted to understand all the levers and buttons to push and pull to make a deal work or not work. Um, I needed to really understand underwriting. So uh, when I first started getting into learning about underwriting, I set a goal for myself to underwrite 5 deals a day before would go to sleep, which was a lot. I mean, I still run two media companies, and I come home from work, we get the kids fed, go to bed, and then get into my computer and find 5 deals to underwrite, which was a much more of a monumental undertaking that I knew at the time.
That's a
And
lot.
it was bending my mind into pretzels day after day after day after day until I could finally kind of crack and understand in specific markets how cap rates move, how equity moves, how apartment buildings are trading and at what price point and why. Also, migration patterns around the United States and different things that were just kind of all in service of distilling what my entry point was going to be and how I was going to find my way into the business. There were a lot of nights when my wife would have to close the computer in front of me because I would be asleep uh, on my fourth deal, just trying to figure out. And these were all deals, by the way, that had just recently traded. They weren't deals that I was actively looking at. I just wanted to understand the economics around the apartment buildings. Sometimes I was just underwriting apartment buildings in my area, in my local area.
Wow. So much to pull apart from that. But the most important one was you picked a habit to develop
Mm,
over time.
mhm.
And I really want the audience to understand that, because how do you become worthy of attracting capital, of attracting deal flow? Well, I can't believe how many people will say, "Hey, I got a deal for you." And this word deal is like so vague. And when you ask them questions, they have no idea what a deal even looks like. The way you just talked about it, Tom, when you're like, "Hey, let me look at migration patterns. Let me look at how cap rates are trading. Why did this person buy this property for the X amount of dollars?" And getting into the head of those investors so that you can learn from the decision making process. That's not something that you can talk about had you not tried to underwrite 5 properties every single day. Like, that's the whole reason when I started in real estate, I Tom, this is like the day 701 of me going live every single day in a
Oh,
row.
amazing.
And the first 365 days was all underwriting. I committed to myself that I'll underwrite one deal live every single day on YouTube, LinkedIn, whatever it is. Because guess what? At some point, someone's going to ask you, "Hey, why do you think this is a deal?" And the only way you're gonna feel confident, well, you might feel confident elsewise, maybe because you're just clueless. But one of the ways I feel like our kids can be confident is you can go back and look at the work that you have done over your life, and that is evidence to yourself that you know what you're doing.
Mhm.
That's how you get that confidence. Like, I can't just give confidence to my kids. I have to tell them, "You gotta do the work," because at some point, only you can have confidence in yourself because you can look back and say, "I know what I'm doing." Because look at my own YouTube channel or whatever it is, and I have X amount of days that I have spent perfecting the skill, just like how you spent all those days underwriting 5 deals every single day. That's crazy, man. That's a lot of deals.
Now I know how crazy that is. Yeah, like that was at the time I'm like, this is just gonna how I do it, how I kind of supercharge myself into this industry.
Okay, well, when you were underwriting, right, and you were learning about cap rates and stuff like that, how did you learn first, man? Like, did you try talking to brokers first? Did you try talking to underwriters first? Tell us a little bit about the process about how you learn how to underwrite.
Well, I'm a big fan of working with people that are finding people that are much smarter than me and finding ways to work with them, whether that's through mentorships or adding value, finding ways to add value to what they're doing. It's one of the reasons that I'm grateful to be here too, Kent, because you have, before we met each other, I felt like I'd already known you because I'd heard your voice so much listening to, listening to your podcast and just the information that I've gotten and the interviews that I've done. I think you've certainly added a lot of value to my life, but I feel like you're really putting a lot of value out there in the world with regard to not just real estate investing, but affordable housing in particular, and trying to solve that crisis. So one thing I did was find people like yourself to and invest time into the content that they're putting out there. The other thing that I've done is I've joined a couple masterminds that are, and I work with some amazing mentors, both in multifamily and now in capital raising, private equity. Um, Most recently, a guy named Ryan Miller. I'll just plug his show. It's called Making Billions. He has a podcast called Making Billions. You should check it out as well. But he has a community called Fundraise Capital, and that's been just like incredibly valuable to the process for me in my way into to the real estate sector, knowing that I have limited experience, that I've only been at it now. We've been investing for the last couple of years, but also knowing that we have big goals to make an actual sizable dent in the affordable housing crisis ultimately. And so he has just, joining these masterminds and having mentors like Ryan has been just a massive help to me. And I'm also a big fan of finding mentors that you can work with to take your 5-year journey and turn it into a 2-year journey.
Yes. This is so good. So that's why I committed to myself. If my daughter ever asks me, like, "Hey, how do I go become an astronaut?" I'm gonna be like, "I'm not your guy," because I've never become an astronaut. I have no idea what
Yeah.
it takes, right?
Let's go find some astronauts though.
Right? Because you
Yeah,
gotta go find the people that can teach you what you wanna do. And I, as a dad,
that's
I'm
right.
just a dad. I'm not qualified to teach you that stuff. And
Yeah.
I think that's probably one of the best advice I can ever give my kids, Tom. It's like, hey, whatever you want to do, if I haven't done it, don't listen to me. And being humble enough to recognize that as a parent, even though you want to be right about everything and live the
Oh
life
man.
for them, it
Yeah.
it doesn't work. And this is so good, man. Oh, this is such a good conversation, man. I knew this was gonna become like a two-part podcast, man. Like we don't even have enough time to finish this one, but let's keep going because let's talk about your foray into affordable housing. So you developed a habit, you learned to underwrite. So now you're just trying to figure things out.
Mhm.
Why affordable housing? Like, did you come across an opportunity? Like, tell us a little bit about why affordable housing for you.
Yeah, so like I tend to do, I felt like I was ready to just buy an apartment building right away, right? Like I once I started to kind of understand the numbers, I was like, I'm also a kind of a math nerd, and once I started getting into Excel spreadsheets and whatnot, I love solving puzzles. And once I started to see the numbers finally make sense and understand what makes an opportunity a real opportunity, I found a building that that I'd underwritten, got the broker on the phone. We had a long conversation. It was 118 units, and half of it was Section 8. When I started looking through the rent roll in T12 on this particular property, and saw that it was Section 8, I'd literally never, I didn't really, I never contemplated. I'd heard the term Section 8, but I'd never contemplated what that might mean in the context of what I was learning at the time, and how to properly handle the tenants that are under Section 8, how to find new tenants, how to lease that up in a way, like really how to what's the difference between the market renters and the Section 8 renter in this particular building. And also now that I've learned too what it means to have Section 8 renters just in an apartment building sharing walls anyways, that's a whole other conversation. But at the time I was looking at it going like, I know these numbers work, and I know I was ready to go buy this, our first building, right? But it was actually the Section 8 portion of it that I realized I don't know enough about this, how to work with local housing authorities, what that even means, what inspections look like. I didn't know enough about it, and I backed away from this deal, even though I was so convinced this is going to be our first thing we were going to buy. I ended up backing away from it just because I didn't know enough to know for sure
Mm,
that when we took over this thing, that I was going to be able to execute a business plan such that we could do two things. One, um, obviously make money. It's a business opportunity at the end of the day, but also to handle the tenants, because this was maybe the first time too when I really started to realize that what this means for me as an investor to be looking at numbers in a spreadsheet and looking at this thing and knowing this is a viable financial opportunity, but then starting to think about the tenants that are in this building and what their lived and living experience is, both in this house, because this is where they feel safe. This is where they lock the door. This is where they go to bed at night. This is where they study. This is where they watch television. And that was the thing that sort of triggered also in my mind, my own experience, knowing like not feeling at times, certainly in my 20s, like I had the potential or the ability to pay my rent. And even when I did finally get myself off my feet, or on my feet and into my own place, just the stress of that that massive bill that comes at the first of every month, and what that looks like. And so it was all of these things where I started to think about, I need to understand better how to operate a building like this if I was going to do it. And this is really where I want to focus. If I can go in and find an opportunity like this that's viable as a business opportunity, and I can come in, I still have a bigger responsibility than to make sure that the tenants have a great experience, right? And that would be for market renters or affordable housing, either way. I think just in general. And so I said about learning about affordable housing in Section 8, and that's really where I decided to set my sights and my focus.
wow. I am this is so good, man. Like, I can't believe that my this is the one I wanna make my kid listen to because I think when you outline how you probably had a little bit of fear getting into Section 8 because you didn't know what it was. And that's
Yeah,
such a great
definitely.
lesson in of itself that, hey, maybe if my daughter is ever afraid of doing something, that fear might just come from a lack of information. That might be it. And if I can challenge her or our kids to say, "Hey, why are you afraid? Like what information would you need to know to be a little bit less afraid?" And helping
Hmm.
them balance between, "Hey, you're never going to get 100% of the information. You're always going to have to make a decision eventually, but at the minimum, maybe you go out, you get a little educated, you find the right people, you get the right information. And maybe now one step leads to another. You're taking one step ahead of another and you're pulling back the curtains a little bit. And you're like, okay, this isn't so bad after all.
Hmm.
Because that's how you can go about it. And
And it never is,
so,
by the way. It's never so bad. It's everything that feels daunting. It's like who is it? Carl Jung said, you know, um, where you find adversity, there's your task, something to that effect. Sorry
that's
to cut you
good,
off,
man.
but
No,
yeah,
no, you're good, dude. Like
yeah.
that, I think that's just so good, man. So tell us a little bit about, all right, so you start learning about Section 8, you start figuring out like, okay, I'm not gonna let an opportunity like that go away because it could be a business opportunity and I get to help people at the
Hmm.
same time.
Hmm.
So tell us a little bit about how you got into, maybe you thought about single family, you thought of multifamily. What was your thought process behind figuring out like, hey, what is my path?
Yeah, initially, that's a great question. So initially, we were looking at ways to get into Section 8 affordable housing one door at a time. But we also realized pretty quickly that that was more of a full-time job than we were looking for, because we're both still doing other things. And this was,
Yes.
so we started looking at multifamily, found a great mentor and a mastermind to join for that as well, where we could really drill down on every decimal point. Excel spreadsheets, frankly, that blew my mind because I thought I was an Excel spreadsheet guy, but turns out I was not. There's like levels to that game. Um, but um, uh, sorry, I lost my train of thought. What was the question?
No, so how did you decide like, "Hey, do I do single family? Do I do multifamily?"
Multifamily. Yeah. So what was it was there were two parts to that. One, that consideration at least. One was um one door at a time felt like a more of a full-time job than they were looking for. Two, it also felt like while we had our own capital to invest, with the goal being making a dent in, the affordable housing crisis, we realized too that we wanted to start making some investments that would pay off, create some cash flow, create more opportunity, more ability for us to be investing, and also get the practice of raising capital for potentially a fund down the road, right? And so we found some great partners, operators to partner up with. One in particular that I met through this mastermind, Zach Soder. We're now invested together on a couple different deals. So we are investing in multifamily. The first one we have just closed. It's in Tifton, Georgia. It's 131 units, but that's just sort of in service of getting more cash flow coming in the door, so that we can aim it in another direction, in a more uh, in the direction of affordable housing.
Wow, going from thinking about single families to 131 units, that seems like a leap that a lot of people are afraid to ever make in their lives, man. So, did you underwrite that 131 unit deal in Georgia yourself? Like, tell us a little bit about how did you get comfort around that project? Because not a lot of people can stretch their mind, so to speak, to go
Yeah.
from a single family to that many units.
Well, the short answer to that is finding great partners. People again that are smarter than me, So that's not a deal that I found. I came into that deal later. Once I met my now partner on it, he had found the deal, underwritten the deal. I mean, it was just the way that he had handled the negotiation and got this under contract, and the way that he was dealing with the seller was just it was a great masterclass for me to watch, from the ground up, how a deal like this is done, and all the different creative
Mm.
ways that you can approach negotiation and purchasing a property of this size. um, but also all the nut this is the thing also too, that where my expertise and the rituals that I've been going through for the past year, I guess at that point, underwriting deals kind of came in, because I realized very quickly that the numbers not only made sense, they really made sense. It was a really an incredible investment opportunity. And there was a capital raise that came with it as well, and that's where I could actually inject some value by coming in and help raise capital to get it closed.
Okay, so maybe two follow-up questions there. When you
Sure.
talked about, hey, you got to see the deal from like soup to nuts, essentially, from all the creative negotiations or way to put together a deal. What did you mean by creative? Like to give the audience like a nugget or two about how what you observed and why you thought that was such a creative way to go approach a transaction.
Yeah, I think that, well, part of it is that, we were able to acquire it for just a little over half of what replacement cost is in that particular area.
Mm,
So there's a lot of value in the property just at the closing table. But the previous owner, this guy, he's owns 2,500 units in the South. He's very experienced. He's um, selling this asset just to pay off some high interest debt on another property that he owned. But he didn't really want to get out of it. He lives 7 minutes from the property. He has coffee across the street every day. He loves being there. And so that was one of the things I felt was Zach, was was a just a great negotiating tactic was to get him to stay in the deal. So we kept him in the deal, which accomplished a number of things. Number um, one of the things that I find when you're looking at these things, you're always wondering what an owner is running away from, what kind of hidden things are going on in an apartment,
yes.
especially with, when it's a big apartment building. There's a lot to consider when you think about what it takes to buy a single family home and the inspection that comes with that, right? And then you multiply that times 131 for an apartment building. There's a lot of ways to hide different things that you don't find out right away. And I loved the idea that he was going to stay in the deal. He clearly was not running away from anything.
Genius.
He his business model before was less focused on renting up to market rents and more focused on taking care of the property. So there's just in the last few years, new roofs, new siding, new doors, all new water pipes and electric underneath the buildings. So it's a very, very stable asset. And the fact that he was staying in the deal was just a measure of comfort, I think, in that way.
Right. So you found a way to get some more comfort around letting the seller have a little skin in the game to make sure that you as an incoming buyer are able to inherit some of the tribal knowledge, if you will,
Yeah,
about that property. Because
that's
you
right.
never
Yeah,
know where you're gonna find the skeletons in 130 plus units. You
yeah.
don't know, but they know because they just went through
He
it. And I
knows.
love your point about making sure that they're not just focused on rents, they're focusing about taking care of experience because so many people underestimate how costly vacancy expenses are. And if you
Mm,
don't take care of your tenants and don't give them a great experience, guess what? They're gonna leave. And whatever projection that you had in your pro forma because you were not a great owner and not a great operator, that those assumptions get tanked right away. So sometimes we like to be in these spreadsheets, but so often we forget how hard execution is. And
yeah.
I can't tell you how many people I've had on the podcast now, Tom, that talks about how the people in underwriting just made all these assumptions and they just kind of threw it over the fence to the asset managers at some point. And the asset manager's like, how did you come up with these assumptions?
Right.
There's no way these expenses make sense. And
Yeah,
sometimes when
yeah,
you just look at these numbers and what people are pitching you and you see these numbers, you're like, this is like a 40-year-old asset. How's your operating expense ratio 30%? That's like a ground up brand new construction type of format. That doesn't make any sense.
yeah.
So you only get that experience by doing the work like Tom did.
Yeah, and at the end of the day too, I think that just boils down to, again, thinking about what the tenant experience is, right? Like, how are you taking care of people? Because taking care of the investment, you can do that in an Excel spreadsheet. Taking care of the people, it takes extra effort and extra consideration and really thinking about what their experience is. And because of that, and the way he's managed this property over the past, I think, 12 years he's owned it, um, it's been running at 98% occupancy over the past 3 years. There's a waiting list to
Wow.
get in. All the tenants are very happy, but that's the thing. It's an investment business at the end of the day. It's a financial business, but it's really at the core of it's a people business. We're taking care of people. That's the whole point.
And I love that you lead with that principle, man. And that's why I understand how you guys were able to kind of raise the capital for this deal because you always had the right intentions behind all your actions. And to kind of tie it all together for this one, Tom, like, are you able to share some of the numbers from this deal? Like, what are you buying it for? Like, what do you expect it to stabilize? Like, what's the upside?
So we are again, this is another, value I think or benefit to keeping Marvin in the deal is that we were able to acquire it under market value. The appraisal just came in at almost just under $3 million over our purchase price,
Wow.
which is great. Market, the rents, like I said, are not quite at market, and we've got some strategic renovations and value add stuff that we're going to do to the property. And over the course of 5 years, get the rents up to market. So that's where the value add opportunity comes in. But it's cash flowing day one. It's going to be, I think it's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of a 20% IRR, 24-ish% AAR, and it's a because it's cash flowing so well, we're able to pay the investors a 10% pref, which is also, I think, really attractive in any deal. And yeah, I mean, it's day one. It's operating at it's a very stable asset and cash flowing and doing everything you'd want an asset to do. We're just going to go in and try to improve it a little bit, make an
Yes.
experience even better. It's another thing too is that by keeping him in the deal, he also has a property management company that services all of his other properties, his 2,500 units, but they're based out of this
Mm.
asset, so they're there on the ground every day uh, at this apartment building, which is
And I
also
love
really
that
helpful.
you
Hmm.
talked through this because this is how you mitigate risk. Going back to the first principles about how do you protect your investor? Think about your investor. Like, how am I protecting them? Well, I got the seller staying on the deal. The seller's also going to be property managing it. He has all the tribal knowledge that
Hmm.
reduces and mitigates the risk so that you have less unknowns, right? We talked so much earlier today about how sometimes the fear of getting into a deal is the lack of information. But now you have the guy that literally owned the deal that's staying in the deal.
That's
So
right.
the circumstances presented really, really well for you guys in this situation.
Yeah. And the lack of information or the fear of getting into a deal because of lack of information, that's our responsibility, for the two things
Mm,
that we take very seriously and are at the core of all of these endeavors is protecting investors' money, treating it like our own, making sure that we have all of the information to mitigate the risk, and then just making sure that we're creating and providing a great tenant experience. And I feel like those two things. Now, there's a lot that comes under each of those umbrellas, of
yes.
course, but those two things, I think, we really kind of focus and let those two tenets of the business model uh, lead. Then I think I told you this yesterday, but I was talking to an investor friend of mine, and he put it very simply. He said, "By doing right, we're doing well."
Yes. Yes. And Tom, I know we kind of just threw a bunch of terminology in there. What does value add mean? Can you explain that to the audience that don't really understand what that means?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that could come in different forms, like value add is like some people say that they like to get into a deal with a little hair on it, which just basically means you can come into a deal and improve the value of the property. Sometimes that's internally, and whether it's renovating units, sometimes it's adding washers and dryers, sometimes it's improving the landscaping, paving the parking lot. There's a lot of different ways that you can add value to the property, which then allows, naturally your ability to raise the rents over a period of time. Uh, that's how you do that. That's how you increase the NOI by, it's also forces appreciation too.
And I love that you kind of explained that because it's so important for people to understand in single family how you determine values by looking at the property that might sold in the same neighborhood and seeing what it's sold for. But in multifamily, you don't have a comparable 131 unit deal to another 131 unit deal. What and how
Right.
most people evaluate the value of those properties by looking at the net operating income. So let's say you, like Tom said, you add washers and dryers or a cash laundry machine or something like that. And now all of a sudden, through rent increases and everything else, you collect an extra $100,000.
That's right.
Well, if it's trading at a 5 cap rate, you just added like $2 million of value to the property
That's
through
right.
strategic thinking, just like how Tom talked you through all those little tactical items. So I didn't want people to miss that because sometimes there's so much jargon in multifamily that I
Hmm.
wanted to just understand quickly like what you were doing and why this was such a great deal because you still had enough meat on the bones. Even though the prior owner did the roofs, the siding, you guys still had renovations in place that you can execute and generate the value that you're looking for your
That's
investors.
right. Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
so good, man. All right, Tom, I know I'm gonna get at least a part two with you, but I'll probably end this with two questions. And the first question is, want to understand from you, how was that transition from raising capital for film, media to real estate? And the reason I'm asking this question is because there's so many people out there right now that either might be working in W-2 that's looking for a way out or looking to break into affordable housing, but they might not even know that they already have the existing network, the skill set to go make an impact in affordable housing.
Mhm.
So tell us a little bit about that transition and how those conversations naturally move for you.
Yeah. So there's multifacets to the answer to this one. One part of it is the difference in or the transition from raising film or capital for film into a more what I would call a tangible asset class was actually kind of a fun one because the conversations with investors that I already had a Rolodex of equity investors that that I dip into when it comes to like a film project or something. And those conversations are very much like, hey, look, we're going to do our best. This film might perform like these other four films just like it over the last 5 years, but the market changes all the time. Audiences, go to the theater some months, sometimes they don't. The business has been shifting a lot and it's become more volatile over the last 10 years. The conversations now with real estate investing have been, hey, look, this particular asset right here, A plus B actually equals C. If we're smart, it's going to equal D, E, and F too. There's an algebra that actually makes a whole lot more sense because it is a much more tangible and stable asset if you're doing it right. So, and that I think for me has been both A, understanding and knowing how to have the conversations around the numbers,
Mm,
number one. Um, B, making sure that I'm bringing to the table the right team, knowing also that I have limited experience and it takes a lot of very deep experience to operate these apartment buildings correctly. Um, so finding the right partners, which I feel like I've been very lucky to do in a fairly short period of time over the last like year and a half, I guess, or 2 years. But I guess the third part of that question is what would I say to folks that are don't feel like they maybe necessarily have the resources and are interested in investing in or finding ways to invest in affordable housing? Is that the question?
yeah, because they might say, hey, someone has known me only for film or only for investing in crypto or only investing in derivatives or mutual funds, right? Like, how do they make that transition? Because it's sometimes people are like, hey, what do you know, right, about real estate?
Yeah, well, I think that's mitigated by bringing the right team to the table,
Hmm.
right? I can bring whatever knowledge that I can, and I know that I'm putting in the work and putting in the hours and putting in the reps to bring as much information as I can to the table for these investors and to mitigate the risk for them. But the the confidence I think really comes in working with a team that has executed before, that has entered and exited deals in a way that has, have they've realized upside for investors. And so I've just made it my mission, I guess, to partner with investors, or I'm sorry, with operators that are much more experienced than I. So um, was the question just about like how
What did you ever get any of those oppositions? Like, Tom, I only invest with you for film. Like, why would I invest you through real estate?
actually, for me, it's been a little bit the opposite because I'm coming to these people going, because I've only ever had conversations around, media projects. And they know that I care for their money in that lane, and that we've never lost any money on our films. But but the funny part of the conversation has been usually like, hey, listen, I know we've only ever talked about film, but I want to talk about this other asset class. I'm starting to invest in real estate in a big way. We're planning to like scale and build in a very substantial way. And most of them have kind of looked at me and smiled and gone like, how do you think I got so rich to begin with? Where do you
That's
think I
so
got my money?
good.
Yeah, where do you think I got my money? So I guess I'm coming to the game a little bit late. I've been so focused in one other industry, but I'm really driven by two things. I'm definitely a capitalist at heart. I like to make money. I also love to solve puzzles, and especially when it has to do with money. Um, but I also want to really leave this world having made a dent and made a difference in people's lives that are maybe less fortunate and need a leg up, need a hand to have a stable, confident, comfortable life.
Man, And I know that our kids going to be able to learn from that. And just the through line of your relationships throughout your entire career has been people have trusted you with their capital. You have never lost their money. You have always tried to mitigate risk for them. And that allows them to have trust in you in your next foray. Because I can tell my kids right now, hey, you, you should think about how you're treating your classmate in fifth grade, eighth grade, high school. Because who knows, one of them might become one of your investors one day.
That's
And
right.
they're always going to remember your reputation. So I always have a mantra to protect my own reputation at all costs, no matter what, because that's really all you have at the end of the day. If you're going to be a bad person to people, it's going to find its way back to you at some point. But if you're a good person and you look out for other people's interests first, somehow karma finds its way back to you and helps you in so many ways. And I am so grateful again, Tom, for you coming onto the podcast today because I didn't know who was listening. To be honest with you, Tom, I didn't know who was listening to this podcast, and I am so grateful to find someone with the right heart that actually wants to make an impact because this is a metric that no amount of views can ever tell me until I got the text message from you, Tom. And I am so grateful you reached out because this is a great segue into next conversations because when I started this podcast, everybody told me that we couldn't, there's no way we could solve this affordable housing problem. And I disagree. I think that every person that comes on this podcast is just another piece of the puzzle. And I view you as such a big piece of that puzzle because not only are you doing the thing, but you're sharing the path of how other people can follow a similar journey as yours, but learning how to develop the habits and the skills to make themselves worthy of creating the impact that they want to make. So Tom, why do you think affordable housing, particularly the lack of supply of affordable housing, has just been so hard to solve for?
So I'm relatively new. First of all, thank you for saying all of that, man. I was very excited to get on the phone with you for the first time because I've just been devouring the podcast and had gotten so much value out of the information from the interviews that at one point I remember thinking, this is probably 6 months ago, but I remember thinking, oh man, whenever I'm at a point where I can add enough value to be on a podcast like Kent's podcast, I know I'll be on my way in my journey of in real estate investing. So just being on the phone with you the first time, I was like, this is amazing. I felt like I knew you already. Um, but why do I think I love this question and I love the varied answers that all of your guests have given? In my estimation, and I have a very, I would say, limited experience, just in the last couple of years, but I'm doggedly determined to figure out what the answer is to that. Because just in general in life, I'm not a sky is falling type of guy. Like if someone comes to me and tells me the sky is falling, what I also want to hear after that is like, and here's the plan, here's what we're going to do about it, right? And so I know that the crisis exists. I know that there is a housing shortage. I know that I think or nationally, I think for every 100 extremely low income households, there's only 34 units available. And that to me says two things. Number one, massive investment opportunity, right, for investors. But number two, we're not trying hard enough. And I think that's partially incumbent upon the folks that are already working to make an effort. And you can only do so much. There's only so many hours in the day. I plan to. Uh, we're finding our way in incrementally, but once we get the door open, we plan to blow it open. That's just from
Nice.
our standpoint. Do as much as we possibly can in the shortest period of time. Put more units online to make sure that low income families have opportunities and a place to live. But I also think that there's for investors, at least from my what I've found, there's a healthy amount of fear around investing in Section 8 or affordable housing, and there's a lot of myths that I've found too, like in Section 8 investing. One being that the tenants are of lower quality or are going to trash your home or whatever. And from what the statistics that I can find and the research that I've done, and also a lot of landlords that I've spoken to that are in Section 8 and affordable housing, it's something in the neighborhood of Section 8 tenants it's like 13% less, or no, I'm sorry, market renters are 13% more likely to trash your home than a Section 8
Mm,
tenant because they can walk out the door and the repercussions are a lot less, right? Maybe they get, sued for 5 grand, but like good luck collecting that anyways. It's like it's not worth anybody's time to go after it. So then as a landlord, you're just fixing the doors, fixing the windows. Whereas a Section 8 tenant, they have a lot more on the line, a lot more at risk by losing that voucher that they may have waited a year, 2 years, 4 years, 5 years, sometimes in some markets 10 years to get a voucher. And so there's just myths out there that are simply not true. I know that there's more effort it takes to become compliant, to do the paperwork, to become a Section 8 landlord and all of that stuff. But in the end, I think the investment opportunity makes it worth it. It's just about, again, putting forth more effort. So I don't know the actual answer to that question, but that's just based on the research that I've found and how I'm looking at, our way in. Because again, we can all go through life seeing a hurdle and going, oh, I guess I should probably just not go down this path anymore because look, there's a hurdle. Or you can spend your time figuring out how to jump over that hurdle or get around it or knock it down or build a bridge over it or whatever it is, because there's an answer to the problem. It's not unsolvable. And so I plan to do everything that I can to be a part of solving that crisis.
Man, I know your kid's gonna be inspired listening to this podcast one day, Tom. This is gonna be so freaking cool, man. I cannot wait for my kids to meet your kids, and we're gonna have a blast, man. I thank you so much for coming on to the podcast today, Tom. I am so grateful for our friendship. You have shared so many little
Likewise,
nuggets
man.
today that I know a lot of people are going to take away. And I cannot wait to bring you back on after you close a few more deals. I know I'm just going to do a little teaser for the audience right now. There's a couple of deals that Tom's working on right now. Some of that include Section 8. And we're going to bring him back on to talk about those deals so that you can really see his journey from the time he landed in LA to now becoming a multifamily real estate investor with a heart for affordable housing. How freaking cool is that? If you cannot get inspired by this conversation, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. But I was so looking forward to this conversation for like weeks, man, ever since I talked to you. So, Tom, for people that don't know how to get in touch with you, where can they get in touch with you, man?
Oh, that's a good question. I need to get more socials up. That's the one thing that, like I've just been so focused on figuring it out, I guess, finding our way in. But anybody can reach out to me at Tom at Spring Street Management, MGMT.com. That's our investment company, Spring Street Management, my wife and I. And I'm always happy to meet anybody that's interested in this, this investment vehicle or just affordable housing or just want to chop it up and say hi. I love talking to people anyway. So,
Man, guys, make sure you shoot him an email. He's a friend you want to have because I'm very grateful for his friendship. So until next time, Tom, thank you so much for coming on. And I can't wait to have you back on again, man.
Kent, thanks for the opportunity, man.
All right. And we are
Looking for
out.